Hello friendo, welcome to Shark Jets. I'm Skidvis. In this video, I'm going to show you how to deploy your C# Discord bot to DigitalOcean using Docker. Trust me, it's easy. Lately I've been spending a lot of time in the Dapper Dino Discord, and there's been a lot of focus on building Discord bots using C# and D#+, which is a library for Discord. I thought I'd put together this video to help those who are starting out who might want to deploy their bot to a real server. But before we go ahead and get started, please make sure to hit the like and subscribe button so I can keep making these videos. And without further ado, let's get started. Okay, so here we are in Visual Studio. The very first step of this situation is we need to have a working bot. So if you don't have a working bot, then stop watching this video because you need that before you can proceed. So once you have a working bot, also if you don't know how to make a bot, here's a link for Dapper Dino's nice introduction to making bots. And okay, let's get started. I have my bot right here. I call it SharkBot. And if I start it, here's my Discord. Feel free to join. Link in the descriptions. Okay, so I've got this bot. When I start this bot, it fires off a message to let me know it's running. So that's how I know it's working. So I'm gonna go ahead and run it, and it'll pop up this window here, which we all know and love. And in my channel, you can see it notified me that it started up and the time that it started up. And as one of my features, I have it watching for the word hello. So if I say hello, it will respond back to me and tell me the time that I said hello. So okay, so I know my bot is working. Perfect. I'm gonna delete this message so that we have a clean slate. And this one. And this one. Cool. All right, so the very next step is we're gonna need, well, I gotta stop this first. Okay, we're gonna need a file. Now this only applies if you've used NuGet packages, right? So if you go into your project and you go to the manage NuGet packages, you'll get this window, right, of all the packages you've installed. Now most of these packages are from, well, this one's from Microsoft, this one's also a legit one. Not that they're not legit, but these D# ones, for instance, they don't come from the main package source. There's a special source for that one. So we had to modify that to get that working. So we need to go into a special folder that Windows has. If you type in %app data %/NuGet, you'll see this NuGet.config file. So we'll need to bring that into our package, or into our current program folder here. I already have it, but there's something I wanted to point out in that file. If you open it with another editor, you might see something that references your hard drive, and if there's a package in there that references your hard drive, that's not going to work, so you'll want to get rid of that. All the packages that it lists should be at a website, a URL, so that's a very important thing to keep note of. So once we've brought that into our directory here, make sure to change it, get rid of anything that's not a URL. The next step is to go ahead and install Docker. So if you go to docker.com, you can download this Docker desktop, and that's going to install all the required stuff to get Docker running on your machine. So once you've done that, which is very simple, just download it, install it. It'll ask you to reboot, and then you'll have a cool little icon in your tray of a little whale, like this guy. So once we've got that going, and you know it's installed and running properly, then we'll need to create a file in our project and call it Docker file, right? So it's just a text file, but we call it Docker file, not dockerfile.txt or dockerfile.anything else, just the word Docker file like you see here. No extension, just Docker file. And then you can copy paste most of this. I'm going to go through this real quick and just tell you what these things are doing. The first line here is getting the .NET Core SDK 3.1. So as you can see here, it's getting it from Microsoft. That way we have that as our build environment, which is where we're going to build the project. And then it's going to create a working directory called app. It's going to bring in our C# projects file, which is what you need in Visual Studio to do all this stuff. And then we have to add this NuGet config file, right? Because we added it to our project. So if you're not using NuGet, then you don't need that particular line, right? So since we are using NuGet, we need this NuGet config, bring that in. And then the next line that runs is .NET Restore, which is when .NET goes and gets all your NuGet libraries. The next thing it does is it copies all of your files to its build folder, and it does a build on it right here. This .NET Publish is actually compiling your project and creating that DLL that we're going to use. The next thing it's going to do is get the runtime library for .NET 3.1. It's going to copy everything that we build over to our app folder. And then if you have any special files that you're using for configuration, for instance, in this particular scenario, we have a config.json file which has our token, and I have another emotes.json file which has emoticons and stuff, whatever, emojis. And so we need to do a copy there. So the first parameter is what file do you want to copy, and the second is where. It's going to be /, right? That's going to say put it where you got the executable or where you have the DLL. And then the next thing, this is one that you will have to change, is the entry point, and that's basically saying what is going to be run. What is the run product, right? So in my case, it's sharkbot.dll because that's the name of my project. So if my project up here was called tomatoes, then in that Docker file, this would be called tomatoes.dll, right? And case is important, so if you see here, mine says sharkbot with a capital S and a capital B, then it's important that it has that capital S and capital B, otherwise it won't work. If you type in lowercase b, that's not the name of this project. This project is uppercase B, so make sure to do that. And that's all we need for this file. That's all that's mandatory. Like I said, this NuGet is not mandatory if you're not using any NuGet packages. If you're not using any config files, which I don't understand how that's happening, you don't need these two, but you will probably need this one for sure. This emotes one is just mine, but you're probably using config.json if you're following Dapper Dino's tutorial. So you will need that. As you can see, those two files are right here in my files. They're not invisible files, they're not hidden, they're not anywhere else, so you must include them in this folder in order for this to work. If you hit copy config.json and there is no config.json file in this folder, then it will fail because it won't find it. So that's it for this particular file. The next file you're going to want to create is called Docker compose.yml. So as you can see here, it's Docker, all lowercase, -compose.yml. Now YML stands for yet another markup language, and this one doesn't have a lot in it. It needs to have this version 3 in the beginning because that is the version that Docker Compose is looking for. This is simply a configuration file. It's pretty empty right now. We don't really have a lot in it, but if you start adding SQL databases and other things to your project, then you're going to need a lot of configuration as far as usernames and passwords and all that kind of stuff. So this is where you put all that stuff. So the second line says services. What are we gonna have running on this particular Docker container? This one's called web. I'm gonna go ahead and change this to bot. And then build is what do we want to build, right? We want to build in this current directory, and that's why there's a dot there. And then we're giving the image that we're building, we're giving it a name. I'm just calling it my Discord bot. You can call it Tootsie Roll, Frisbee, whatever you want, right? Very simple file. Just save that, make sure it's included with everything here in this particular folder. And that's too big, so I'm gonna reduce that again. Here's this, let me get a little bit bigger there. If you wanted to get a better look at this file, this is the Docker file again. So you can see this NuGet.config and the config.json, all that stuff. Cool. I'm gonna go ahead and save that. And now comes the fun part, right? We got to go to the command prompt. So I'm gonna go into my project folder. Which is the folder that has all of my main files, right? As you can see, I had a folder before this that had my other things. I don't know what all this stuff is. But this folder, the one that has the bin folder in it, your commands, your models, all this stuff, you got to be in this folder. The config.json file needs to be in there. The Docker compose file needs to be in there. That Docker file needs to be in there, right? That NuGet.config file, if you're using NuGet packages, needs to be there. Everything needs to be contained in this particular folder. So now I'm going to go ahead and open a command prompt. Okay, so in our command prompt, we need to type in a simple command, docker-compose space up. And what that will do is it will build the project and then run it. Now, if you make any changes to your code, this doesn't know that you did that. So like if I run Docker Compose up for the first time, it'll build it. But then if I hit Docker Compose up again, it'll just run the one that's already built. So when you make a change, you got to type in Docker Compose build, and it will go ahead and go through the whole process of building your changes. But to run it, you just hit Docker Compose up, and it will go ahead and launch the bot. You can see there it is, firing away. And if I go into the Discord, you can see it sent me that message again. So we'll go ahead and delete that again and swing back to our command prompt, and you break out of it, make it stop running by hitting Control-C, and that'll stop it. So that shows us that our bot is working and our Docker configuration is also working. So now we can move all of this to a different server. In order to do that, you're going to need to use GitHub. So if you're not familiar with Git, you're going to need to learn a little bit of that first. You're going to have a GitHub account. So I'm going to go ahead and assume that you know about version control, and I'm going to commit my changes. I'm going to see if I have any by typing git status. I do. I apparently made some changes to my compose files, so I'm going to, I changed it from web to bot. All right, so I'm going to git add this. Oops, that's not how you spell add. And I'm going to commit this change with a message of updated Docker files. And then I'm going to git push it to GitHub. All right, so now all of my changes have been pushed from my computer to the GitHub repository. And if I go to GitHub in my web browser, you can see my repository here. The last change it says was an hour ago, so if I refresh this page, it should be a few seconds, 26 seconds ago. So that changes my updated Docker file. So now this is in GitHub. Now, in my situation, I'm using a private repo, as you can see up here, which means that you can't see it if you go to this address. You can't see this code, but I can. Because of this, I can't access this server or this code without special passwords and stuff like that. So what I'm going to need to do, because I have two-factor authentication, is I'm going to have to create a special password for this repository. And if you don't have two-factor authentication on yours, you won't have to do this. But I do, because I have two-factor authentication, because that's the right thing to do. So if I go into the settings of my account on GitHub, there's a section down here that's called Developer Section Settings, and there's a thing called Personal Access Tokens. And I'm going to generate a new token, and it asks what is it for. I'm going to say Discord bot. Basically, I'm creating a password for just this specific repo. I'm going to check this repo button, which will give this password access to this list of roles, and generate a token. Now it's going to give us this code here, and I'm going to need to copy that and keep that in a safe place, because we'll never see this again. All right, this is a one-time thing, so just copy that code and paste it somewhere safe for now. All right, so we're on GitHub, everything is up to date, and so the next thing we need to do is go to DigitalOcean, right? That's where we're going to set up our project, right? So if we go to DigitalOcean, we want to create a droplet. Now DigitalOcean, I use it personally because it's really cheap. Its minimum account is $5 a month, and I can spend that. That's not a problem. So I go ahead and get started with a droplet, or we can go up here and go to create. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to go ahead and create a droplet. That's what they call their instances. And then we wait for a second, and it's going to ask us what kind of operating system we want, how much we want to pay, that kind of stuff. You want to do a couple things here. You want to go into Marketplace and find the Docker instance that they have. So right there it says Docker 5.19, whatever. Click on that, and then choose your plan, right? So they set you up here at this 41, but if you go all the way back, this one's just $5 a month, 1 gigabyte, 25 gigs of hard drive space, 1 terabyte of transfer. You know, it's a pretty good plan for $5 a month. So I will hit that, and I'll leave everything else the same, except there are a couple things you might want to change. If you're not using SSH, which you should, but I'm not going to go into that, then you'll want to set this one-time password. So I'll click on that real quick. But again, I encourage you to learn about SSH keys and use that because it's more secure. But we'll click this one for this example. So one-time password, they're going to email me the password to this server. And then they want you to give your droplet a name. I'm going to call this Discord bot. All right. And hit create droplet. And that's all there is to that. Just wait a few seconds and this line will go all the way across. Okay, so now we're done here. You can see we've got a green light. That means our droplet is up and running. So I'm going to go ahead and click on it really quick. All right. And then I'm going to go to the console. There's a button up here for the console. And that will open up another window. Now it's asking me to log in, but I don't have the login or password unless I check my email. And there you have it, my IP address, my username, and my password. So I'm going to copy that, go back into that console window. As you see in the email, the username is root. So go ahead and log in as root. Put in the password that they give you, and then it's going to ask you to change it. So we put it in again and type in a new password. And that's it. Now we're logged in. You want to make sure Docker is installed, so I'll just type in Docker and hit enter and see what comes up. All right, something came up. That means it's there. we want to make sure Git is installed. So I'll type in Git and hit enter. And there you go, we got a bunch of stuff about Git. So Git and Docker are installed, which is what we need. So we go back to our GitHub and get our clone address. So if we click on clone or download, it's going to say clone with either SSH or clone with HTTPS. Since we're not using SSH right now, we want to make sure to clone with HTTPS. So we just copy this address that they give us here and go back into our console. Now in here we type in git clone space and then that address. And then once we hit enter, it's going to ask us to log in. Now here's the important part. You want to put in your username for GitHub. So my username is skidvis. Now if this is a public Git repo, you're not going to have to log in at all. If it's a private repo, you got to log in. If you're using two-factor authentication, then you're going to need that special personal access token that we created earlier. So I'm going to go ahead and copy paste that. And as you can see, it pulled all those items down. There's 92 items, 100%. So if we do ls, which is list, it'll show us that there is a folder there that you can barely see called Sharkbot. And if I type in cd, that's going to make me change directories. So I'll do a cd into that Sharkbot folder. And then I'll do another ls. And now you can see we're one folder and we're looking for that folder that has the compose file, the Docker compose file. So I'm going to cd again into the next Sharkbot folder. And now you can see all of these files. Let me do an ls-l, which is going to list everything neater. So all right, we're looking for this folder. It's got all of our files in it. It's got that docker compose.yaml file. That's what we want. So just like before, you can type in docker-compose space up. And it'll go ahead and build everything. It's going to download all of the stuff that it needs first. Right now it's downloading .NET Core. And now that it downloaded everything, it's going to go ahead and do that restore by getting all of our NuGet packages. And then finally, it's going to launch the bot. As you can see, it says bot 1, just like it did on our desktop. It's telling us that everything is working. And if we go into our Discord channel, sure as heck, there is the message that it pumps out when it starts. And if I type hello, it should come back and say hello back. All right, so now we know it's working as it should. I'm going to go back into that console and I'm going to show you the last thing. We can't keep this console running forever, so I'm going to go ahead and Control-C to close out of this again. And just for giggles, I'm going to type in docker compose space down, which is going to make sure that the bot is turned off. Now what we want to do is tell it to run without us needing to keep this window open. And the way to do that is to type in docker compose up again, right? But this time we'll put a space and a D. Now what this means is it's going to run it in the background. So if I hit this, you'll see it start up, but then you won't see any of the console messages, right? So it's not logging all of this stuff anymore because it's running in the background. I can go ahead and close this window and it'll keep running. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. I'm just going to close this window for now. And as you can see, it's still running. Now, here's the cool thing. Now we've done the hard part, we've done the setup. Next time when we make a change to our bot, let me go ahead and show you how easy that is. So I'm going to go back into my code and I'm going to find that hello message. Okay, this is the startup message. So I'm going to go ahead and just write updated here. It says we have successfully started I'm gonna make that a little bigger. It says we have successfully started, so we know when the server starts, that comes up. I'm just gonna write updated here so that we know that we've made a change. I'm gonna save it. I'm gonna build it. Make sure there's no errors. Okay. Now I'm gonna assume this works, right? Because this was just a very simple text change. But if I had done anything major, like add a new command or something, you wanna make sure to test it on your machine first, right? You gotta make sure it works before you upload it. So I'm gonna assume this works because I just added a text file, a text field here, a little string. That's not a big deal. So I'm gonna build it. I did. Right. Cool. So now I go back to my command prompt here and I do a git status. And it's going to say, hey, you changed that one bot file. So I'm going to add that change. And then I'm going to push that change to GitHub. Okay, so GitHub has the latest version of this file. Now I'm going to go back to DigitalOcean, open that console again, and I should be in the same place I was, so I'm just going to write docker compose down to shut down the bot. All right, everything's been shut down. So then I'm going to do a git pull. And it's going to want me to log in again because it's a private repo, but this may not happen for you. And as you can see, it pulled in that one change that I made to bot.cs. Now, like I said before, if you make a change, you need to do a special docker compose command. So we go docker-compose build to make sure that it makes a new version of the bot. So only take a few seconds. Okay, now we're up and running. So now I go ahead and do a docker compose up-d. And that will fire our bot back up. And if I go back into Discord, look at that. It says updated on the new message that I posted. And there you have it. Quick and simple bot deployment, if you can call it that. Would you have done something differently? Just let me know in the comments. If you found this video helpful, please make sure to like and subscribe to keep this channel moving along. Thanks again for watching. I'm still SkidViz. Pikachu. Peace out.